So you've spent over $1,000 on a home espresso setup and the coffee you're making sucks. Here's why that's happening, how to fix it, and how long to realistically expect until you're making good coffee at home. There are 4 main things that can go wrong when you're making coffee at home, specifically for a home espresso setup. Starting off with espresso shots. They could run into channeling, sour or bitter flavors, dosing problems, and how we prepare our puck. And when it comes to milk steaming, that's gonna be harder than you think. You have to worry about the texture, whether it's too thin or too thick, too bubbly, the kind of milk you're using, from whole milk to non-dairy, and it even comes down to the kind of machine you're using. Different machines have different powers for steam that you have to take into consideration. And of course, we have to talk about latte art. That's what a lot of beginners are excited to master when they get their very first home espresso machine. But you might struggle with producing microfoam, and until you do, your latte art is gonna come out abstract, for lack of better words. Number 4, making a cup of coffee in the morning takes longer than you might expect. Realistically, it takes time to understand how your machine works, how long it's going to take to heat up, and the amount of time required for brewing and steaming, and if there are multiple coffee drinkers in the household. But how long does it actually take to get good at making coffee at home? I like to think of it in stages. So let's start with day 1. This is when you're just getting to know your machine. You're gonna reference the manual to understand how things are going, and then in general, getting familiar with the settings takes about 1 to 2 weeks. This is particularly true if this is your very first espresso machine. If you are a former barista, you've made coffee on a friend's machine before, or you've just seen a lot of videos online, you might be able to go through this process a little bit faster, but expect differences in a home setup versus any commercial equipment you may have had experience on. And if you're the kind of person that wants to just push a button and go with your coffee, a super automatic espresso machine might be a better fit. Totally different category, but still worth considering. Once you know how your machine works, you begin the process of dialing in, finding the right grind size, dose, and expectations for your coffee recipe. This definitely takes trial and error and can result in some coffee waste, but don't worry about that. That's perfectly normal and part of learning. A great place to start for your espresso recipe is 18 to 20 grams of ground coffee, yielding out 30 to 40 grams of brewed espresso in 25 to 30 seconds. And that's just a reference point. It is not a rule. Taste is what matters most. Within the first month of having your espresso machine, this is when you start learning how to really steam milk. Getting the milk to the right texture and temperature takes practice. And here's a tip for steaming. You want to take your non-handle holding hand and keep it on the pitcher until it is too hot to keep it there. Let go and turn off your steam. This is generally a really good drinking temperature for most people and will keep you from burning your milk. So that brings us into latte art, which is where things get really fun and also frustrating because microfoam is tricky. I teach our latte art class here at Seattle Coffee Gear, and we always start with the basics. You need to get good milk texture, an espresso shot with lots of crema, and then you need to follow consistent technique each time you pour. It takes a couple of months to get the hang of latte art, and even then, latte art is camera shy. You'll do really great on a random Tuesday and then miss every pour when someone's watching. That's totally normal. And finally, after 6 months of regular use, you'll start to see some real consistency. Your shots will taste better, your milk texture will be easier to achieve, and you'll be able to make drinks that actually taste like a cafe made them. Don't let that 6-month timeline scare you. This is just part of the fun. One of the best things about having and owning an espresso machine is the hobby and the craft of making coffee. And like any craft, it just takes time and practice. That being said, there are tools that can help you out, such as scales to measure your dose and output, WDTs, different latte pitchers for different designs with a rounded tip or sharp tip, or different sizes for different drinks, or really convenient, handy, measured shot glasses. If you are working on your home barista skills, what are tips or tools that have helped you so far? Share your experience in the comments.